Do you ever wonder what it was truly like to live behind those ancient convent walls? What fears haunted them? What hopes sustained them? What secret powers they sought? For medieval nuns from the 11th to the 15th centuries, their lives were deeply intertwined with figures beyond their earthly realm. Number 7. Mary, Mother of God. The veneration of Mary, Mother of God, for medieval nuns was not merely a matter of distant admiration. It was a deeply personal, intimate connection that shaped their daily existence within the cloister. Every aspect of convent life, from the structure of their prayers to the imagery adorning their sacred spaces, echoed with her presence. She represented the pinnacle of purity and humility, qualities that were not just admired, but were actively striven for by every nun. The very concept of virginity, central to the monastic vows, found its ultimate expression in Mary, the Virgin Mother. Her life, as depicted in countless illuminated manuscripts and devotional texts, provided a blueprint for spiritual perfection. Nuns devoted significant portions of their liturgical day to Mary. The little office of the Blessed Virgin Mary, a shortened version of the Divine Office, was recited daily in many convents, complementing the main monastic hours. These prayers, often recited in Latin but also translated into vernacular languages for personal devotion, consisted of psalms, hymns, readings, and responsories, all focused on Mary's life and virtues. An example from a 14th century horarium, a book detailing daily schedules from the Benedictine Abbey of Barking, shows that the nuns would gather 7 times a day, in addition to the main office, specifically for Marian prayers, demonstrating a persistent, pervasive devotion. Iconography within the convent walls also heavily featured Mary. Frescoes on chapel walls depicted scenes from her life: the Annunciation, when the angel Gabriel announced she would bear the Son of God; the Visitation, her meeting with Elizabeth; the Nativity, the birth of Jesus; and the Dormition, her peaceful passing. Wooden statues, often exquisitely carved and painted, showed Mary holding the infant Christ, a tender image that symbolized her role as spiritual mother, not only to Christ but also to humanity and, by extension, to the nuns themselves. Such statues in the Cistercian convent of Las Huelgas in Spain, dating from the 13th century, were regularly adorned with rich fabrics and jewels by the nuns, reflecting their deep affection and reverence. Nuns often identified with Mary in her suffering, particularly during the Passion of Christ. Devotional practices like meditating on the 7 sorrows of Mary, which included the prophecy of Simeon, the flight into Egypt, the loss of Jesus in the temple, and her presence at the foot of the cross, allowed nuns to share in what was perceived as her immense sorrow and grief. This form of empathy was understood to deepen their own spiritual connection to Christ's sacrifice. A 15th century Flemish manuscript from the convent of Port Royal des Champs includes detailed instructions for such meditations, indicating their prevalence among the nuns. Beyond her role as a model of virtue and a figure of liturgical devotion, Mary was also seen as a powerful intercessor. Nuns believed that through her unique position as Mother of God, her prayers held exceptional weight with Christ. They would turn to her for protection, for guidance, and for relief from illness or spiritual struggle. Letters and wills from medieval nuns occasionally mentioned bequests to Marian altars or requests for specific prayers to Mary for their souls after death. The testament of a nun from the convent of Sainte Claire in Avignon, dated 1398, explicitly requests that a perpetual lamp be kept burning before the altar of the Blessed Virgin, ensuring continuous devotion in her name. Many convents were dedicated to Mary, bearing names like St. Mary's Abbey or Our Lady of Grace. These dedications signified not only the primary patroness of the institution, but also a spiritual umbrella under which the nuns lived their lives. The very foundation of these houses was often seen as an act of devotion to Mary, a testament to her enduring influence. The Benedictine Abbey of Our Lady at Fontefraud, founded in the 12th century, famously housed both nuns and monks under the governance of an abbess, reflecting a profound trust in female leadership, often associated with Mary's own strong yet nurturing spirit. The image of Mary as a queen, particularly in depictions of her coronation in heaven, also resonated with nuns. This imagery showed her not just as a humble maiden, but as a figure of immense power and authority, elevated above all others. This regal aspect could have provided a sense of empowerment for women living within hierarchical structures, reminding them of the spiritual dignity and ultimate reward awaiting those who served God. The famed Psalter Hours of Yolande of Soissons, likely created for a noblewoman who later became a nun, contains lavish miniatures of Mary's coronation, serving as a visual testament to her queenly status. For medieval nuns, Mary was a constant presence, a spiritual mother, a powerful intercessor, and the ultimate embodiment of the virtues they sought to cultivate. Her story was told and retold, her image venerated and her prayers invoked daily, weaving her deeply into the spiritual fabric of their enclosed lives. Number 6. Mary Magdalene. Mary Magdalene held a profound and complex significance for medieval nuns, offering a narrative of transformation, devotion, and profound spiritual depth that resonated deeply within the cloister walls. Her story, often interpreted in the Middle Ages as that of a penitent sinner who became one of Christ's most devoted followers, provided a powerful example of redemption and spiritual rebirth. This narrative offered solace and hope, suggesting that even those who had fallen from grace could achieve profound sanctity through unwavering love and repentance. In many medieval interpretations, Mary Magdalene was conflated with other biblical figures, including Mary of Bethany, the sister of Martha and Lazarus, and the unnamed sinful woman who anointed Christ's feet with oil and her tears. While modern scholarship often distinguishes these figures, for medieval nuns, this composite figure created a rich tapestry of devotion. She was seen as the epitome of passionate love for Christ, a love so intense that it transcended her past transgressions. This intense devotion was a model for the nuns, whose own lives were dedicated to an exclusive love for God. Accounts from the Benedictine convent of Saints Cosmas and Damian in Rome suggest that nuns would engage in prolonged meditations on her act of anointing Christ, seeing it as a profound expression of humility and adoration. The image of Mary Magdalene as a solitary penitent dwelling in the desert was particularly compelling for nuns living in enclosed communities. Tales from hagiographies, such as those found in Jacobus de Voragines' widely popular Golden Legend, describe her spending 30 years in the wilderness, nourished by angels and experiencing mystical ecstasies. This portrayal of an anchoress, a solitary religious recluse, resonated with the monastic ideal of withdrawal from the world for intense spiritual focus. For nuns, this image served as a powerful metaphor for their own cloistered existence, which was also a form of withdrawal from worldly distractions for the sake of spiritual purification. Frescoes in some convents, such as those within the Poor Clares convent in Assisi, depict Mary Magdalene in ragged clothes, her hair unbound, gazing skyward in ecstasy, providing a visual focal point for such contemplation. Mary Magdalene's role as the first witness to the resurrection, and the one commissioned by Christ to announce it to the apostles, gave her a unique and elevated status, sometimes referred to as the apostle to the apostles. This position was especially significant for nuns, as it presented a female figure at the forefront of Christ's most crucial revelation. It affirmed the spiritual capacity of women to receive and transmit divine truth, even to male authorities. In many convent libraries, copies of theological commentaries and sermons would emphasize this role, often highlighting her courage and unwavering faith, even when the male disciples doubted. Surviving sermons from the 12th century found in the archives of a women's house in Cologne elaborate on this particular aspect of her importance. Devotion to Mary Magdalene was expressed in various ways within convents. Many chapels or altars were dedicated to her, Nuns would keep small portable images of her for personal devotion, often depicting her with a jar of ointment, symbolizing her anointing of Christ and her role as a bearer of sacred oils. Relics attributed to her, though often fraginate and dispersed, were highly prized. Reports from the Abbey of Vézelay, a major pilgrimage site associated with her, indicate that women, including nuns, would travel great distances to venerate her supposed relics, believing in her power to heal and intercede. Her feast day, July 22nd, was celebrated with particular solemnity in convents. Special readings from scripture and hagiographies were chosen to highlight her journey from sin to sanctity, her fervent love for Christ, and her pivotal role at the empty tomb. These liturgical celebrations reinforced her significance as a model for spiritual conversion and unyielding devotion. Musical compositions, often plain-song chants, specifically for Mary Magdalene's feast day, survive from many monastic institutions, tuning the artistry and reverence with which her memory was honored. A hymnal from the 13th century convent of St. Cecilia in Rome contains several unique chants dedicated to her, demonstrating a flourishing musical tradition centered around her devotion. The story of Mary Magdalene provided medieval nuns with a rich and multifaceted model for their spiritual lives. She was a beacon of redemption, a testament to the power of love and penance, a symbol of contemplative solitude, and a powerful female figure at the heart of the Christian narrative. Her journey from perceived sinner to intimate confidant of Christ offered a relatable and inspiring path for women striving for sanctity within their enclosed worlds. Number 5. Catherine of Siena. Catherine of Siena, though not a nun in the traditional sense but a Dominican tertiary living in the world, became an immensely important figure for medieval nuns, particularly from the late 14th century onwards. Her life focussed an active mystical piety combined with bold engagement in the political and ecclesiastical affairs of her time, offering a powerful alternative or complementary model to the enclosed contemplative life. For nuns, Catherine demonstrated that profound sanctity could flourish not only within the cloister, but also through dynamic participation in the world's spiritual and political challenges, all while maintaining an intense inner mystical life. Catherine's deep mystical experiences, including visions, revelations, and the phenomenon of the stigmata, the appearance of Christ's wounds, were central to her appeal. Accounts of her ecstatic states, often described as moments of profound union with God, were widely circulated. Nuns, many of whom also sought deep mystical experiences through prayer and contemplation, found validation and inspiration in Catherine's reported experiences. Her major work, the Dialogue of Divine Providence, dictated by her to her scribes while in ecstasy, was copied and read in many convent libraries. This text provided intricate theological insights into the soul's journey to God, offering complex spiritual guidance that would have been eagerly consumed by intellectually inclined nuns. A manuscript copy of the dialogue from a Dominican convent in Venice, dated to the early 15th century, shows extensive marginal notes, suggesting close study by the nuns. Beyond her mystical life, Catherine's active engagement in the political landscape of 14th century Italy and her forceful advocacy for church reform were remarkable. She corresponded with popes, kings, and political leaders, urging them to action and reconciliation. Her letters, often direct and passionate, demonstrated a woman who spoke with authority and conviction, unafraid to challenge powerful men. These letters were also circulated and read in convents, providing examples of how a woman, through her spiritual authority, could wield significant influence. For nuns who might have felt constrained by their enclosed lives, Catherine's example showed a different kind of power emanating from spiritual devotion. Her efforts to bring the papacy back to Rome from Avignon, known as the Babylonian captivity, were widely celebrated as a testament to her persuasive spiritual power. Catherine's severe asceticism, her rigorous fasting, and her commitment to self-mortification also resonated with monastic ideals of penance and bodily discipline. While her practices were extreme, they were understood within the context of imitating Christ's suffering and purifying the soul. Nuns engaged in their own forms of asceticism, and Catherine's life provided a powerful, if challenging, model for intense spiritual striving. Stories from her hagiography describe her living on very little food, enduring prolonged vigils, and wearing a hair shirt, practices that were often admired as signs of extraordinary spiritual commitment. The Dominican order, to which Catherine was affiliated as a tertiary, had a significant number of women's convents. Dominican nuns in particular looked to Catherine as a powerful embodiment of their order's ideals, a combination of contemplative prayer and a thirst for truth, often leading to active preaching or spiritual guidance. Although she was not a formally ordained preacher, her words and writings functioned in a similar way, disseminating theological and spiritual wisdom. The Dominican sisters in communities across Europe would have seen her as a direct spiritual descendant of their own founders. Records from the Dominican convent of San Domenico in Pisa indicate special celebrations of her feast day, commemorating her as a model of Dominican spirituality. Catherine also drew a wide circle of disciples around her, both male and female, who recorded her life and disseminated her teachings. This community, known as the Caternati, further amplified her influence. Nuns within convents who formed their own spiritual communities could identify with this network of shared devotion and intellectual pursuit. The biographies written by her followers, such as Raymond of Capua's Legenda Mayor, provided detailed accounts of her life, miracles, and teachings, ensuring her story reached monastic libraries. Catherine of Siena offered medieval nuns a multifaceted and inspiring figure. She demonstrated the possibility of intense mystical union with God, combined with active engagement in the world, and exercised significant spiritual authority even as a laywoman. Her life provided a powerful example for nuns seeking to deepen their spiritual lives, understand complex theological concepts, and perhaps even to exert influence within their own communities and beyond, all through the power of devout faith. Number 4. Clare of Assisi. Clare of Assisi stands as a pivotal figure for medieval nuns, particularly those of the Franciscan tradition. She was not merely a follower of a great male saint, Francis of Assisi, but a co-founder of a distinct, powerful female order known as the Poor Clares. Her life championed radical poverty, profound spiritual devotion, and female leadership, providing an enduring model for women seeking a life of absolute dedication to Christ within enclosed communities. Her rule, centered on the privilege of poverty, became a touchstone for countless women across Europe. Clare's initial act of renunciation, fleeing her wealthy family home in Assisi to join Francis, was a powerful statement of her commitment to a life of poverty and simplicity. This bold step, taken in 1212, marked the beginning of the Order of Poor Ladies, later known as the Poor Clares. For nuns, her rejection of worldly comforts and status was a direct imitation of Christ's humility and poverty, a central tenet of Franciscan spirituality. Stories of her first days, cutting her hair short and exchanging her fine clothes for a simple habit, circulated widely in the hagiographies read by nuns. Core of Clare's spiritual vision, and the most challenging aspect for her order, was the absolute adherence to poverty. Unlike many monastic orders that held communal property, Clare insisted that her convents and the individual nuns within them should possess no property, either individually or communally. They were to live solely on alms, trusting completely in divine providence. This privilege of poverty was not easily granted by the Church, which preferred the stability of endowed monastic foundations. Clare fought tirelessly for this privilege, even appealing directly to popes. Her persistence and ultimate success in securing papal approval for a rule specifically enshrining radical poverty, just before her death in 1253, demonstrated incredible spiritual resolve and leadership. Nuns reading her rule, such as those in the convent of San Damiano where she lived, would find a direct and uncompromising call to an unparalleled commitment to poverty. Clare's leadership within her community, first at San Damiano and then as abbess for over 40 years, provided a powerful example of female governance within a religious context. She guided her sisters not only spiritually but also practically, managing the daily life of a community that lived on alms. Her letters, particularly those to Agnes of Prague, a Bohemian princess who became a poor Clare, offer insights into her spiritual wisdom and her practical advice on living the Franciscan ideal. These letters were copied and disseminated, providing guidance to other Poor Clare communities forming across Europe. An early 14th century collection of letters from Clare to Agnes of Prague, found in a German Poor Clare convent, suggests that these writings were highly valued for their spiritual direction. Beyond her rule and leadership, Clare's personal devotion to Christ was legendary. She was known for her deep contemplative prayer and her identification with Christ's suffering, often described as having a profound personal relationship with Jesus. Stories of her miracles, such as the famous incident where she repelled Saracen invaders by displaying the Blessed Sacrament, reinforced her image as a powerful intercessor and protector of her community. These accounts, preserved in the legend of St. Clare and other Franciscan chronicles, were eagerly read by nuns, offering encouragement and a sense of divine protection. The spread of the Poor Clare order throughout Europe was a testament to Clare's enduring influence. Convents sprang up in Italy, France, Spain, Germany, and beyond, all looking to Assisi and Clare's original community as their spiritual mother house. Nuns in these new foundations would have studied her rule, imitated her way of life, and celebrated her feast day with great solemnity. Communal nature of the Poor Clares, a sisterhood bound by a shared commitment to poverty and spiritual life, mirrored Clare's own devotion to her community at San Damiano. Construction of new Poor Clare convents often followed the architectural style of San Damiano, symbolizing a direct lineage to Clare's original vision. Clare of Assisi provided medieval nuns, especially those drawn to the Franciscan charism, with a foundational and inspiring model. Her life demonstrated unwavering commitment to radical poverty, formidable spiritual leadership, and profound contemplative devotion. She proved that women could not only lead religious communities but could also forge entirely new paths of sanctity, even in the face of ecclesiastical resistance, all while remaining steadfastly rooted in the ideals of the gospel. Number 3. Hildegard of Bingen. Hildegard of Bingen, a 12th century Benedictine abbess, mystic, visionary composer, writer, and natural scientist, stands as an extraordinary figure whose influence resonated deeply with medieval nuns. Her life embodied a remarkable combination of intense spiritual experience, profound intellectual curiosity, and assertive leadership, offering a unique and compelling model for women within the cloister. She proved that a nun could be not only a contemplative, but also a public intellectual, an artist, and a powerful voice in an age dominated by men. Hildegard's spiritual authority stemmed from her lifelong experience of divine visions, which she believed were direct communications from God. From a young age, she claimed to see the living light, and eventually, under divine command, she began to record these visions and their interpretations. Her major visionary works, Scivias Know the Ways, Liber Vitae Meritorum, Book of the Merits of Life, and Liber Divinorum Oberum, Book of Divine Works, were circulated and studied. Nuns in other convents, aspiring to spiritual insight and understanding of divine mysteries, would have found these texts profoundly inspiring and challenging. The intricate cosmological and theological diagrams that accompanied some of these manuscripts, often meticulously copied by scribes within her own convent, provided visual guides to her complex revelations. Beyond her visions, Hildegard was an exceptionally prolific writer. Compositions included over 70 liturgical songs, which were performed in her own convent and likely circulated to others. These compositions, characterized by their soaring melodic lines and expressive texts, provided a unique musical language for nuns to express their spiritual devotion. Collections of her music, such as the Symphonia Ammoniae Celestium Revelationum, Symphony of the Harmony of Celestial Revelations, demonstrate her innovative approach to composition. Nuns would have sung these pieces in their daily offices, experiencing a direct connection to her profound spiritual insights through music. Hildegard also ventured into the realms of natural science and medicine. Her works, Physica, A Natural History, and Causae et Curae, Causes and Cures, detailed observations on plants, animals, minerals, and human ailments, along with their medicinal properties. These texts suggest a keen intellect and a practical engagement with the natural world unusual for a cloistered nun. For nuns responsible for infirmaries or those interested in herbal remedies, these writings would have been valuable resources. The existence of these texts in convent libraries across Germany suggests their practical utility and intellectual appeal. As an abbess, Hildegard demonstrated remarkable leadership and independence. She successfully petitioned for her community to separate from the male monastery of Disibodenberg, where she had initially been offered to God as a tithe, and establish her own independent convent at Rupertsberg in 1150. Later, she founded a second convent at Ebenien. This act of founding new independent communities showcased her administrative skill and her firm resolve to provide her nuns with a suitable environment for their spiritual and intellectual pursuits. Her correspondence with popes, emperors, and influential figures across Europe, in which she offered spiritual counsel and even admonition, further highlighted her public role and authority. Copies of these letters, preserved in collections such as the Epistolarium, would have been read with great interest by nuns who might have drawn lessons on asserting spiritual authority. Hildegard's insistence on the dignity of women, particularly in their spiritual capacity, also resonated with nuns. She saw women as capable of profound spiritual and intellectual achievements, often challenging the prevailing societal norms that limited female agency. Her life itself was a testament to this belief. Nuns, living in communities entirely composed of women, would have found her example empowering, reinforcing their own sense of worth and purpose within the Church. Hildegard of Bingen provided medieval nuns with a powerful and diverse model. She was a visionary whose direct connection to the divine offered profound spiritual guidance, a composer whose music elevated their worship, a scholar who explored the natural world, and an abbess who forged independent spiritual communities. Her life demonstrated that a nun could transcend the traditional boundaries of the cloister to become a leading voice in theology, art, and even science, all while maintaining an unwavering commitment to God. Number 2. Scholastica. Saint Scholastica, the sister of Saint Benedict of Nursia, holds a foundational and enduring significance for medieval nuns, especially those of the Benedictine tradition. While Benedict established the foundational rule for Western monasticism, Scholastica emerged as the crucial female counterpart, embodying the ideals of female monasticism and providing a specific model for women living under the Benedictine rule. Her story, primarily recounted in Gregory the Great's dialogues, positioned her as a spiritual peer to Benedict, demonstrating that women were capable of the same profound sanctity and spiritual lead in the monastic life. Scholastica's importance is intrinsically linked to her relationship with Benedict. Gregory the Great described their annual meetings at a house near Monte Cassino. These meetings were not merely family visits, but profound spiritual conferences, where the siblings would discuss sacred scripture and divine things, sharing their insights and experiences. This depiction of a fraternal, yet spiritually equal bond, provided a powerful image for nuns. It showed that women could engage in deep theological and spiritual discourse, and that their spiritual wisdom was on par with that of their male counterparts. The shared spiritual wisdom and mutual respect between them suggested a powerful model for female spiritual direction within a community. Even without the hierarchical structure of a male abbot, the most famous story concerning Scholastica is her final meeting with Benedict. As evening fell, Scholastica, sensing her death was near, pleaded with Benedict to stay longer so they could continue their spiritual conversation. Benedict, adhering strictly to his rule, refused, insisting he must return to his monastery. Scholastica then prayed, and a sudden, violent thunderstorm erupted, preventing Benedict from leaving. He was forced to stay, and they continued their discussion through the night. This miraculous event, often interpreted as a triumph of love over rigid adherence to law, served as a powerful testament to Scholastica's spiritual power and divine favor. For nuns, this story highlighted the importance of charity and compassion, even within the strictures of monastic life. It also demonstrated the power of a woman's prayer, capable of altering natural events. Gregory the Great's account of this miracle in his dialogues became a widely read text in Benedictine convents, shaping the understanding of Scholastica's unique spiritual authority. While no formal rule written by Scholastica survives, it is understood that she presided over a community of nuns who followed a way of life very similar, if not identical, to Benedict's rule. Her direct association with the founder of Western monasticism meant that female Benedictine communities across Europe looked to her as their spiritual mother and foundress. Convents of Benedictine nuns were frequently dedicated to Saint Scholastica, and her image was prominently featured in their churches and chapter houses. Examples include dedications in early medieval nunneries in Italy and France, which emphasized her connection to the foundational Benedictine tradition. Scholastica's life, as presented by Gregory, emphasized contemplative devotion and a deep love for God. She was depicted as a woman entirely consecrated to Christ, living a life of prayer and spiritual discipline. This focus on interiority and spiritual union was a central aspect of monastic life for nuns, who often sought solitude and silence for intense contemplation. Her example reinforced the value of these practices as a path to sanctity. The simple, yet profound descriptions of her life provided an accessible model for all nuns, regardless of their background or intellectual capacity. Her feast day, February 10th, was celebrated with particular reverence in Benedictine convents. The liturgical readings and chants for her feast day focused on her purity, her deep love for God, and her spiritual authority, particularly through the story of the storm. These celebrations reinforced her role as a patron and model for female monastics. Surviving liturgical books from medieval Benedictine convents often include specific prayers and hymns for Saint Scholastica, underscoring her importance in their devotional calendar. Scholastica's enduring legacy lies in her status as the archetypal female Benedictine. She provided a spiritual sister and equal to the patriarch of Western monasticism, validating the monastic path for women and ensuring that female religious life had a powerful, divinely endorsed precedent. Her story, with its emphasis on spiritual discussion, the power of prayer, and the triumph of love, offered medieval nuns a profound and accessible model for their consecrated lives. Number 1. Margaret of Antioch. Saint Margaret of Antioch, a virgin martyr whose dramatic story captured the imaginations of medieval Christians, held an exceptional place of importance for medieval nuns. Her appeal lay in her unwavering faith in the face of brutal persecution, her defiance of a tyrannical pagan authority, and, most famously, her victory over a monstrous demon in the form of a dragon. Her narrative, widely disseminated through texts like the Golden Legend, provided a compelling blend of courage, purity, and miraculous intervention, resonating deeply within the cloister. Margaret's legend begins with her conversion to Christianity, which immediately sets her apart from her pagan father. Her refusal to renounce her faith, even under torture and the advances of the Roman prefect, Olybrius, made her an ultimate example of chastity and steadfastness. For nuns, who had taken vows of perpetual virginity and commitment to Christ, Margaret's story served as a powerful reinforcement of their own dedication. Her purity, maintained despite threats and violence, was a virtue intensely admired and emulated within convent walls. Hagiographies detailing her torments, read aloud in the refectory, often inspired awe and resolve among the nuns. The most famous and captivating episode in Margaret's legend involves her encounter with a dragon. As the story goes, while imprisoned, a demon appeared to her in the form of a terrifying dragon and swallowed her whole. However, due to the cross she carried or her fervent prayer, the dragon burst open and Margaret emerged unharmed, a symbol of good triumphing over evil and faith overcoming demonic forces. This miraculous event made her a popular patron against demonic influence and a powerful intercessor for spiritual battles. For nuns, who often faced internal struggles against temptation or external pressures, Margaret's defeat of the dragon offered immense reassurance and hope. It underscored the belief that divine protection was always available to those who remained true to their faith. Surviving medieval frescoes in convents, such as those in the Abbey of Novi Diver, depict Margaret emerging from the dragon, providing a vivid visual reminder of her triumph. Margaret's story was part of a broader cult of virgin martyrs, a group of saints particularly venerated by women. These martyrs, who chose death over renouncing their faith or compromising their purity, provided formidable role models of spiritual strength and ultimate sacrifice. Margaret stood out among them due to the fantastical elements of her legend, which made her tale both thrilling and deeply symbolic. Her popularity is evidenced by the sheer number of churches and chapels dedicated to her across Europe, including many convent churches. Beyond her role as a symbol of purity and a vanquisher of demons, Margaret also became known as a patron saint for women in childbirth. While not directly related to a nun's life, this patronage often meant that nuns who sometimes provided spiritual guidance or care to the local community would invoke Margaret's name on behalf of women in labor. Her ability to emerge unscathed from the belly of the dragon was often seen as a parallel to a woman safely delivering a child. This patronage deepened her relevance, not just for nuns personally, but also for their role in the wider Christian community. Chords from the 14th century Augustinian convent of Gandersheim include specific prayers for Margaret's intercession during difficult births, indicating her widespread invocation. The widespread circulation of the Golden Legend, a compendium of saints' lives compiled by Jacobus de Voragine in the 13th century, was instrumental in popularizing Margaret's story throughout medieval Europe. This text was a staple in monastic libraries, and nuns would have been intimately familiar with her daring exploits and steadfast faith. Her feast day, July 20th, was celebrated with particular enthusiasm, featuring sermons that recounted her bravery and piety, reinforcing her importance in the lives of the nuns. Saint Margaret of Antioch, with her dramatic encounters and steadfast faith, provided medieval nuns with a powerful and captivating model. Her unwavering purity, her miraculous victory over demonic forces, and her ultimate triumph through martyrdom offered courage, reassurance, and a vivid example of divine protection in the face of adversity. Her story, rich in symbolism and marvel, served as a constant reminder of the spiritual battles and ultimate rewards awaiting those who remained faithful.